Welcome to Streaming Star Wars. I'm Pete Fletcher, and normally I have Nick Milky with me, but does not look like Nick is here. We are joined by one of our favorite people that we get to hang out with on social media, Regan. Regan, how are you doing tonight?
Hi, I'm doing very well. I am not Nick. I hope nobody is disappointed, but I'm very happy to be here.
We are so happy to have you. Nick is he's probably watching right now from a beach somewhere. He's on vacation this week, and but we decided we wanted to get on. And I've been dying to just have a great Star Wars conversation with you. You and I have kind of known each other over social media for I guess over a year, maybe
Yeah,
two now, and we've
yeah.
gone back and forth on a bunch of things. And I felt like you have a story to tell. You have an opinion on things, just perfect for what this show is about. So Regan, maybe give people just a little bit of your background, who you are, and your Star Wars connection.
Oh gosh, what is my background? I'm from New York. I am very of New York. I've largely my background was creative arts, and actually I worked in film for a while, and then I left that and I worked in theater for a while, and now I do none of those things and effectively work in science and technology because the world is weird. But I I loved Star Wars for a really long time, and I feel like it's such a part and parcel almost of Americana, and it's
Mm.
impossible for most people, I think, now to even have grown up in any way, like not having it almost as much of a fixture as like their religion.
Yeah.
And certainly my dad was really into it, and I was into anything that my dad was in too. So that kind of started me there. And um, I did I read a lot of the prequel era comics I really liked, and I had read some Legends books when I was a kid. Although oddly, I did not read the Thrawn trilogy until
What?
lockdown. I didn't. I like it just avoided me forever. I don't know how. But I loved the prequels, and I was like that person that had all the Pepsi merchandise, and I had my like Mace Windu sippy cup, and I really liked Star Wars. And I remember very distinctly being online for Revenge of the Sith at the UA Court Street Stadium 12 Theater with my friend Craig and my friend Liza, and we were online, and I was just kind of like, I had enjoyed the prequels, but I was not the person who, like, when Phantom Menace came out, was just like losing my mind about it. It was just kind of, it was Star Wars. And by the time Revenge of the Sith ended, and and Darth Vader is in finally in full costume being turned toward the camera, I had this moment of going, oh my god, I love Star Wars. Like, I realized, like, my blood was racing and my heart was pumping. And then all of those years later, when the trailer for Force Awakens came out, I had the same thing happen to me. I was kind of like, oh, Star Wars. And I watched all the animated stuff and I really loved it, and I loved the stories.
Hmm.
Um, but like, I realized that there's something every once in a while that has to trigger my brain that usually starts because I saw that trailer and I was like, oh, Star Wars, there's more Star Wars. And then I went to see Force Awakens in the theater, and in that moment of silence between a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away and like the swell of the music, my heart just tightened, and I was like, I love Star Wars.
Yeah.
And this is Star Wars. I love Star Wars. This is a Star Wars movie. And then, like, for as much hate as people give the sequels, it just kind of like fully cemented it for me. And because of the sequels, I went back through all of the animated stuff that I had watched already. And I just like, I didn't, I mean, I finally like purchased the Clone Wars completely like 2 years ago, just to finally own it, because I had been like watching it in dribs and drabs forever. And then of course, like, Disney Plus I was able to get it for free like 2 weeks later, so
Of
it
course,
felt
yes.
like very wasteful. But then I was able to, like, I went back through all of the animated stuff, and really like reprocessed it, and like didn't half watch it, and like really like paid attention to it and paid attention to the storyline. And then during lockdown especially, I really started like crazy, like book a week Legends and canon, started just going through all of the Star Wars books, and I realized that I truly, with my entire heart, love being in this universe. And even though I will always have like I feel like reasonable criticisms of it, as anybody can, I love being in that universe, so I will always love anything Star Wars gives me.
That's great, and I think that's really one of the very interesting things about being a Star Wars fan is how it literally encompasses you. Like I talk a lot lately about the bell curve, right? You have on the far right of the bell curve, you have people like me, it sounds like you, a lot of other people who just like live and breathe and are like can it just like it's got a hold of you somewhere. But the most of the world is in the middle, and that's where a lot of the conversations happen that get a little bit strange. So one of the things we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the show is, this current state of fandom, these conversations that are happening online, the way people are approaching being a fan, because it is different than when you came in through Clone Wars, and through the prequels, and through it's very different from when I watched it in 1977 as a 7-year-old and had to wait 3 years, and the mindset was different. So the fandom has changed quite a bit. So I'm excited to have you here on us with us here on Streaming Star Wars. We have a couple people with us. We got Darth Chaco. We've got podcasts. So Nick is definitely watching from the beach. Nick, we are so happy you're here, and kind of sad that you're watching from the beach. So hopefully you're having a good time. Hopefully you got a drink in your hand. Speaking of drink in your hand, we just want to raise a real quick toast, as we do every single week on Streaming Star Wars. There's your Snapple iced tea. I've got some red wine, and cheers. Happy Star Wars, everyone.
Happy Star Wars.
Well, Regan, you are new to the show, so what we do at this point in the show is I'm going to do the news, and then when we come back, we'll hit some of those top stories, the things that are exciting to you, and then we'll dig into our next topic. So if you're ready for the news, I'm going to go ahead and hit it.
So ready for the news.
All right. Hasbro drops some premium action figures, Disney Plus Star Wars gets some Emmy attention, and Han and Leia get married in a new book. Give us 5 minutes and we'll give you the galaxy. Another week, another flood of news, rumors, clickbait, and conversation. This is Pete Fletzer, and welcome to Disturbances in the Force. All the links to the original sources can be found in the notes, and I urge you to check them out. So let's get to it. Well, the Andor series has been making news lately as the show prepares for its launch on August 31st. In addition to news coming out over the last couple of weeks that the season 1 will lead up to year 1, or 1 year before the 2016 movie Rogue One in 3-episode arcs. Also, the directors and writers have been identified, but this week, a new Cassian Andor Black Series figure has been unveiled. The 6-inch Black Series premium action figure will come in a set that includes a new droid called B2EMO. B2EMO. We kind of like the joke that's happening there. The set will be available in the fall, and it's going to hit shelves with a $55 price tag. In addition to the Andor figure, Hasbro also announced a vintage collection pack inspired by the final episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian called The Rescue, and it's going to feature a Dark Trooper, the Mandalorian, Moff Gideon, and Grogu. It's going to be available this spring, and it's going to sell for about $75. These premium figure packs are available now for pre-order. Hasbro also announced this week their upcoming selfie series of action figures that will allow fans 16 and older to create toys with their own faces on them. These will be collector-level 6-inch figures, and you'll be able to put a 3D printed version of yourself or your friends on the figures from across the Hasbro licensing body, including Power Rangers, G.I. Joe, Ghostbusters, and of course, Star Wars. The first previews of this offering are going to be available to be seen at San Diego Comic-Con this week and will be more broadly available in the spring of 2023. Emmy nominations were announced this week in Star Wars television. Let me try that again. Emmy nominations were announced this week, and Star Wars Television made the shortlist in multiple categories. Book of Boba Fett received 4 nods, including Outstanding Costumes, Sound Editing, Visual Effects, and Stunt Coordination. In addition, the animated anthology series Star Wars Vision also was recognized with a nomination for Outstanding Short-Form Animation Program. The 74th Annual Emmy Awards will happen on Monday, September 12th. Taika Waititi has been doing the interview circuit lately, supporting his new Marvel blockbuster Thor: Love and Thunder. And while the Oscar-winning director has been a little cagey with details about his upcoming Star Wars film, The Hollywood Reporter is claiming that multiple sources have pointed to production for the yet-to-be-titled film beginning in early 2023. There is no official confirmation of this at this time, but the information does put it ahead of Rogue Squadron as the next possible Star Wars theatrical release. In other production news, the new Disney Plus series Skeleton Crew, which was announced at Star Wars Celebration, has apparently started shooting in Los Angeles. The show will star Jude Law and is helmed by Spider-Man No Way Home creators John Watts and Christopher Ford. There's very little known about the show at this time other than what was shared in May. It's said to be set in the Mandalorian series era and is going to feature a group of children on their own in the Star Wars galaxy. No other actors or creators are officially attached to the show at this time, and with it filming now, fans can expect Skeleton Crew to drop in 2023 on Disney Plus. StarWars.com dropped an excerpt from the upcoming novel, The Princess and Scoundrel. The book, written by Beth Revis, follows the romance between Han Solo and Leia Organa following the Battle of Endor, as seen in Return of the Jedi. They will be married and spend some time on a galactic cruise ship called the Halcyon and have an adventure there. If the Halcyon sounds familiar, it's because that is also the name of the Disney theme park live action experience / hotel, also known as the Galactic Star Cruiser. The excerpt is available now on StarWars.com, and you can pre-order the book at the Amazon link below for its August 16th release. Finally, last week, we were excited to announce the return of Pottathon for the third straight year. The full-day charity event brings the biggest Star Wars content creators together with celebrities and personalities to raise money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Last year, we raised over $8,200, and this year, we're setting our sights on $10,000. So please join us. Pottathon 2022 will take place on Saturday, September 17th. It'll start at 9 a.m. Eastern and run into the night. Prizes will be raffled off to those who donate, and every single penny goes directly to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Visit thepottathon.com or follow at thepottathon on Twitter and Instagram for all the latest news and information. Well, that wraps it up for this week's Disturbances in the Force. Make sure to check out the ATG Cast podcast stream for weekly one-on-one interviews with the people behind the fandom. This Thursday, Podcast of the Wills will close out their Phantom Menace conversation with Lauren Romo of the Galactic Podcast. Please subscribe for regular updates, follow us on all your social media channels at ATGcast, and visit our website at atgcast.com to keep up with us, find our merch, and get information about supporting the show as an ATG patron. Thank you so much for listening, and may the Force be with you. Well, that's the news, Regan. That's this week's news. Lots of news. Even when there's not much going on, allegedly, there's lots of news. Oh, your house is falling down. So any of those news stories particularly grab you? Anything you're excited about?
Well, I'm excited about a lot of things, but I just need to address something. I know that Disney has to make money. Disney exists to make money. But much like Delilah Dawson's Galaxy's Edge novel, which was wonderfully written, but like a very thinly disguised advertisement to just go to Disney World and go to Batu, and like literally just like tells you what all the shops are, tells you the flavor of the popcorn. Right. And you can tell, like I actually said to her on Twitter that it must have been tricky to have like an obvious list of things she was probably mandated to write into the book, and I'm sure it's the same thing. And I know that like they want to just make all like everything that you can consume canon in some way, and I'm excited about that book because I really enjoy any little snippets and snapshots of Han and Leia's relationship. But at the same time, there's also a part of me that's just like, okay, especially because unlike Galaxy's Edge, I think the Halcyon is a much less accessible experience for most people. So like, it's not like, you can just read that and just be enticed to go, because you probably, for most people, I think that is like, it's more expensive than a typical honeymoon. Like you have to, you have to save for that. But I'm excited about it. I will read it because I consume pretty much everything that's put out to me. So, but yeah, I'm definitely excited about the selfie series figures that are coming out. I wish that they had kind of like a better choice of a female body than like what is a very iconic Leia outfit, right? Because there's something a little sacrilegious about that, I think. But I can also understand how possibly, I don't know, they were just trying to be as anodyne in their choice as possible. But I think it's really cool. I feel like hopefully, I don't know if they announced what the price point is. I hope that it will be, somewhat reasonable, because it is just 3D printing, so it
Right.
shouldn't.
Yep.
Because I think, especially for kids who, like, if you go, any time I've recently seen a Star Wars in the theater, I feel like kids have been the most receptive to just the um, greater amount of like diverse representation that we have. So hopefully, I think, like, for kids who finally are now starting to get to see themselves in Star Wars, it's a way for them to actually really see themselves in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Will it be kids mostly and not just grown men? Like, no, but it's still
It's gonna be
it's still
50-year-old
conceptually
men like
exciting.
me putting my goofy face on a stormtrooper. That's what's gonna happen. But but the selfie series is a very interesting concept. To your point, it shouldn't be ridiculously expensive because the technology is there now to make it, fairly accessible. I think they're going to make their money on packaging and just trying to make kind of a big deal about, putting, Pete in a box that's a Black Series style box. But it is kind of a cool idea, and to your point about people seeing themselves in these things, and it's cool that it's also Power Rangers and Ghostbusters and GI Joe. And I love the concept. I'm curious as to how well it takes off. And as we work our way toward talking about the fan reaction, we can look at things like the HasLab project, which I didn't put in the news this week, but
I have
interesting.
thoughts.
Oh,
I have
excellent. I know you got
thoughts.
thoughts. Oh, I'm sure you got thoughts. But it's interesting because the last two HasLab projects, for people who aren't familiar with HasLab, what they do is they create a crowd-funded, fairly substantially priced um, toy set. So the ones that have been done before have been the sail barge. Jabba sail barge was the first one that hit its goal. The funding goal is usually several thousand people at about $350 a piece. The one just after that was the Razor Crest, which killed its funding goal. It crushed it. Then they tried the Rancor about a year ago, and it did not
Yeah,
reach.
that
And
failed.
that was also at $350. And then the most recent one, of course, is a Inquisitor lightsaber for Riva, specifically Riva's lightsaber, priced at $500, and it only got about 1,500 people committed to it, which was below, I think it's a 4,000 person goal. I could be wrong on that number, but why do you think it may have missed its mark? And maybe that one and the Rancor, because the Rancor, again, that is, that's classic Star Wars. That's, the
Well,
broadest possible audience, right? So
when the Rancor one failed, I remember seeing a lot of people discussing how, even outside, and maybe, I hope I'm not hallucinating this, outside of Star Wars offerings, HasLab had a bunch of failures.
mhm.
I think they had a big Transformers one that didn't
I think you're
go
right. I think
also.
you're right. Yep.
And somebody, I saw someone tweet about the Rancor one, that they jump on things that they feel might be kind of popular in a moment, because there was, right at the time that the Rancor one came out, there was obviously like a lot of Rancor visibility in the TV series, and that it's not necessarily speaking to, which we know Hasbro has a long history of ignoring things that fans ask for over and over. Like, they're not necessarily, you know, like, reaching to the heart of what people want. And
Mhm.
even though, like, like, I think the tweet that I saw that I really resonated with was, somebody said, like, yeah, the Rancor's cool,
But
but
right.
um, but the thing with Riva, I just think it was also incredibly poorly timed. I think it
Yeah.
was too much of a hot button issue, which it shouldn't have been. But I kind of wondered if they weren't hoping or thinking that maybe, even though there was this overwhelming, just vile, like, I don't want to say fan reaction, because those people aren't fans, just a vile, um, certain corner of the internet reaction to her character that was just completely unfounded. Um, I think they maybe thought that, like, when the swell of support for Moses Ingram kind of came out, maybe they thought that there was an opportunity there to not. I don't. I mean, obviously, it was in the works before that, but, like, maybe the announcement was timed in the hopes of monetizing that a little bit, thinking that people would want to support it. But at the end of the
Mhm.
day, it's one of the most expensive
Yep.
HasLab offerings that they've done, and people are broke. right now.
Yeah.
Like even if people wanted to support her, like people, I think they had like a lot of pre-orders for her figure because that figure was like $30. But like you can want to support her, you can love the character. People, it's just not the kind of scratch that people have floating around right now. But also like, and maybe this is part and parcel of what we have to discuss later, something that like the fandom menace people love to lean on is that they are the ones that spend all of the money on the
Right.
stuff, which
Yep.
sometimes is true because more often than not they are like, you know, older gainfully employed people who have like a house and disposable income. But you know, they also vocally did not want to support her character. So I just think like, I don't know. I'm not in marketing. I'm not in toys. But if
Hmm.
it was me, I would have waited on that one for like a year when more people would have warmed up to the character as they
Yep.
always do, and we were in a different economic situation where people might have had more money to throw at that. But I also think that as with everything Hasbro puts out, like we know what the bottom line is. We know that the manufacturing cost does not even come close to like what their markup is, as was the case
Sure.
with that like absolutely like disastrous black chrysanthemum that they vomited out, which was an obvious like chewy mold and had a totally different body shape that
Right.
cost them nothing to produce, and then they like marked it up, I think at like, what was it, like $30 or $40,
Yeah.
you know, like, and made it like a deluxe figure. Even like I get that it's like, you know, it's a complicated saber and it's got two ends and all of that, but that price point, I feel like it was arbitrary to
Yeah,
some
and I
degree.
think the price point was high, right? Even if I think if it was 350, just for argument's sake, like the Razor Crest, like the sail barge, I think it might have been a little more accessible. I still don't think it would have hit its number, primarily because I think you hit an important point, and the Razor Crest, of course, flies in the face of what I'm about to say. But I think there's a certain you. It's very difficult to launch a product at the same time that the character appears. You need Star Wars is built on, I hate to say it, but in many cases is built on nostalgia, right? So there's a nostalgic desire to buy a gigantic sail barge or to purchase even the Razor Crest, because the Razor Crest came out a year after, or was went into HasLab about a year after the series. It was during the second series, the second season, so it had some time to be there. And of course, the Mandalorian's a different series in that it was the first Star Wars on Disney Plus. It took off in an unprecedented way. Nobody knew that it was going to go where it did. So the Razor Crest also is kind of it's Millennium Falcon Jr., right? It's got personality. It was as much a character, if you will, as Din himself. So there was something about that to bring a $500 premium lightsaber out for a character that frankly nobody knew, even if she came out and was wildly popular. Right, let's take the Fandom Menace way of thinking out of this. It's gonna be hard to sell a $500 product for a character that you've known for 4 weeks. It's just very difficult to get to that point. So I don't disagree with your points on that at all. So um interestingly, at the same time, and Half Moth brings this up to us. Good to see you hanging out with us. There was a GI Joe Hiss tank, and that was funded in hours. Now that was also, I think it was $250, and the GI Joe toy fan base is almost as rabid as the Star Wars fan base, if not more, depending on what side of the coin you're looking at, though.
And they
So
love to turn their Scarlet figures into Mara Jade. They love to do that. They love to cross over that threshold.
we'll make our own Mara Jades. I don't care what Lucasfilm and Disney does. I'm bringing Mara Jade back. So well, that's interesting. So, so do you think that they will try another crowd-funded HasLab for Star Wars within the next 12 months?
No,
No.
no, no.
You think they're
I think because I also think that I would say the next one is probably not going to come out until the next season of Mandalorian.
hmm,
Unless there's something in Andor that is just, you know, that really really stands out and they think. But again, I completely agree with your point. You know, like it has to be something that you want because it's something that's been in your consciousness for a really long time.
hmm,
And I also think, honestly, even some of the figure releases, like I was very excited about all of the Obi-Wan figure releases. I'm a big, obviously, Black Series person.
Mhm.
But like, I don't know. It just, I like V2 emo, super fun joke, but I've noticed that like everything's getting its own special, highly marketable droid
Right.
lately. And I'm just kind of just like, you can go a little easy. We're still gonna buy stuff. You don't have to like jam it into our ear hole, you know? And I don't like, I hate that it came out because all of the Obi-Wan figures, they were announced, at like mostly at Celebration, I believe, but like as the first episodes were dropping,
Mhm.
like it's just to have the figure out ahead of Andor, especially when there are still so many Black Series figures that we've been asking for years that they just won't do. Where is my Luke on crate? I've been asking for that
Yeah.
forever. And they're just kind of rushing to production, and I don't like that because it makes me feel like I hate to use the word, but I'm being shilled to.
Yeah. No, and you know what? It is a challenge. And JD Sleesman says here in the chat, JD, thanks for hanging out, buddy, that the Saber was too expensive. If they'd lowered the price and not been so greedy, it would have been funded. I, I I'm not sure, and I referenced that before. I don't want to totally disagree with you. I think if they had issued an Obi-Wan Saber at 250 for some, that would have gone, because there were enough people who were going into this series because they wanted Obi-Wan. We didn't. Again, I really think most of it comes down to, it's not whether you liked Riva or not. It's you didn't know Riva, and you didn't. It was hard to care $500 worth about it at this point, right? So I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens next and where they go next. So hey, we're seeing a lot of people coming and hanging out with us in the chat. We have Andy from Holo Chronicles with us. We have in a Galaxy Far. We have Half Moth who popped in. Alden Diaz coming by. He's saying, "I came for the fire. I'll text you a list of people I hate." Regan, that's very nice. Very good. We have ARS Michael joining us. Hey, look at
Hi,
that. Good to see him.
Michael.
We got a lot of great people. Hang out. We may be able to get to a point where we throw the link up, and maybe we'll be able to get some of you in to say hello and join us with some of your opinions. Benny Relp is with us. How are you doing, old man? Good to see you. So let's get to sort of what we wanted to talk about, and what you and I talked about when I invited you to join me, because Nick is sitting on a beach somewhere enjoying a cocktail, sitting in the sun. You and I are sweltering in the New York, New Jersey area because we haven't had rain in 3 weeks and it's 90 degrees. But that's okay. We're not upset with Nick having a good time. I'd say he deserves it, but I don't want to go that far. But here's what we wanted to talk about: the state of fandom right now, and you brought it up at the top of the show, coming into Star Wars fandom, becoming more social media active, looking at what's happening in the fandom. There is sort of this challenge, right? And one of the things I think I said to you before we came on was that there's positivity, there's neutrality, and then there's negativity, right? There's this sort of, we're in a position where having an opinion needs to be positioned. It doesn't need to be, but is often very considered before being stated because of the response from people. It's very easy to hate. We're seeing that the negativity from the dark underbelly of fandom, which is being uh, misappropriated by political viewpoints and things like that. We'll probably hit on that a bit, but it's difficult to have a dissenting opinion about something Star Wars without it becoming an argument. So much so that the pendulum is a bit on the other side, where if you're only focusing on the positive because you want to be a positive human being, you're starting to, in a way, start to feel like you can't even slip to that critique side of your conversation. How do you feel about that, and where do you want to take us on this one, Reagan?
Well, I mean, it has been, especially since Book of Boba Fett, since everything that Disney Plus has pretty much released that's not The Mandalorian, it's been a little bit emotionally exhausting to be in the middle of all of it. And whatever, that's partially my own fault because sometimes I don't know when to unplug. But it had gotten to the point where I realized that I felt so like I was excited about Obi-Wan, but I just felt such nonstop dread
Mhm.
knowing what that discourse was going to be, because it also like leaves me in a position where when Book of Boba Fett ended, did I think I was like, well, that finale was a little all over the place. The whole series was kind of disjointed. It didn't really go to the place that I hoped that it went to, but there were so many elements in it that I loved, because I think it's really important to look at a bigger picture and see, you know, the like just even if the sum total of everything didn't necessarily work in the way that you wanted to, because whether or not it worked in general is very subjective.
Mhm.
That there's good and bad, and wouldn't it be nice to be able to actually just have a real discussion about that? But the hatred was just so immediate, like every single like morning. I mean, you couldn't even get past 9 or 10 a.m. before just all of Twitter was ripping something apart, like ripping apart Robert Rodriguez and saying that
Yeah.
he should never touch Star Wars again. Like, what movies have you made? You
Well,
know?
but so that's a great point, because I'll add to that, in that it's almost become expected, and it's becoming exhausting knowing that when something comes out, there's people waiting to have an opportunity to hit their hot tweet and be out there to say something negative. As much as I think we're all excited about the Andor series, part of me is dreading it, because I don't care how great it is or even how bad it is. It's going to cause the next wave of Star Wars fan hostility. And I use fan as an air quote, because of the fact that I do feel like there's fans, and then there's people who want to jump on whatever this is because they know it's a hot enough topic that it's going to get attention, and they can get their sort of their 30 seconds of being pissed off at the world out in something else.
And I'm a little extra worried about Andor, because I kind of my gut feeling is that as all Star Wars is allegorical, especially like we know what Rogue One was
Mhm.
kind of representative of, and given that the times that we're in, I can't imagine that the writers aren't going to weave in a lot of socially important messages right now, especially since it also has a strong female co-lead in
Mhm.
it. And I just think like they're just going to go in on it so harshly and so unfairly. But like even like with Book of Boba, like I remember that, when the Scooter Gang premiered, I kind of like, my opinion was like I didn't hate it, but I did agree it kind of didn't feel super Star Warsy
Right.
to me. And like I would have loved to have been able to say that in a reasonable way and was prepared to do so. But unfortunately, when you log on and you want to say something, and everything else that you are seeing is the most vitriolic, drooling, just inexplicably rage-driven criticism, it just precludes the ability to have a valid dissent of anything,
Mhm.
because you're just then like lumped into that messiness and that ugliness.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's creating sort of, you almost have to put on your colors before you go in for whatever you're going to say, because on the other hand, and again, it's just like the political environment now, where it used to be you could like Clinton or you could like Bush, and if you didn't and we sort of butted heads on it, we walked away from it saying, I disagree with your politics. I didn't look at you as a different human being. Whereas now, if you have a Biden shirt on or a MAGA hat on, you are immediately judged. You are immediately, your entire character has been, um, either assassinated or lauded based on simply one aspect of you as a person. And when you take that and you apply it to where we are with Star Wars, right? Again, I get called a shill at least 10 times a week, right? Because I happen to only talk about and focus most of my attention on the things from Star Wars that I like. I told you before we got on, there's 1,000 things that I do not like about The Rise of Skywalker, but I don't make it my online personality, and I know so many of my friends like it. What's the point in coming out and attacking it? That said, it has literally taken away any possibility for me to have in the online space that old-fashioned conversation that you and I can have. We can hop on the phone, we can talk, at face-to-face at Star Wars Celebration and say, what didn't you love about this? I thought Luke's character in The Last Jedi was blah blah blah. Cool, let's have that conversation. But in the social media space, if I was to go on and say I didn't like the speeders in Book of Boba Fett, immediately people who are you end up being so defensive of your favorite thing that you go, why doesn't that guy like it? Is he just one of those guys, or does he have a valid criticism? And then unfortunately nobody asked, maybe Pete actually has a criticism. It's more well, he has turned to the dark side. He's turned to the people who hate Star Wars in the Disney era, and that sort of concept, and it makes it kind of difficult to have the conversation.
And I mean, I do, like, there's a part of me that fully understands that, because, like, as I told you earlier, when I walked out of Last Jedi and I was just like enthralled, and I love that movie. And it happened two times, because I did not hate Rise of Skywalker. I didn't put it in the same vein as Last Jedi. I thought this movie seemed a little hastily slapped together and very fan servicey, but I am a fan, so by all means, service me. I thought it was kind of like, it felt like a bunch of strung together vignettes of some kind, but I didn't hate it, and there was just a cheesiness to it that I thought was very classic Star Wars, and I walked out of both of those movies, having not been on Twitter for 10 days, and I like, trying to keep myself away from spoilers, and like immediately both times on the subway opened my phone, and it was just like, it was just so crushing and so destructive. And I understand that, because when you love something and you have very strong emotions about it, and someone puts a pin in that, like, there's a literal chemical response in your brain that is almost uncontrollable. But the thing about being an adult is that you are supposed to be using your time on this earth to do your best to learn how to meter your emotions and your reactions to things, and people can't do that anymore. And it's partly, I believe, because people evolved as social media evolved, into this false concept that they themselves are a brand. And certainly we all behave like that. We put out content that is very specific to who we are. We try very hard to, like, maintain a voice that is consistent, but we also get a very false sense of, just the weight of our opinions. And
Yeah.
where it kind of goes sideways is, you're allowed to dislike something. You're allowed to dislike something in a way that is just so mind-bogglingly, like, I hate to use the word vitriolic again, but I can't think of another word, that it makes you sound kind of like incoherent and insane. What I think, where it crosses a line before it even gets to, like, the constant abject racism and misogyny, is when you think that you are somehow entitled to have someone else's art remade because you don't like it.
Yeah.
When you are, like, your entire argument is that it didn't turn out the way that you wanted it to, therefore it's bad.
Right.
It's there, it can just be like, I don't know, I have seen so many movies and TV shows and read so many books, and I've disliked a lot of them, and very rarely, unless like, the author is just inept at what they do, or the creator is inept at what they do I think it is objectively bad. I just usually think, oh, it wasn't for me. It didn't appeal to me, because I am not so much of an egomaniac. And let's be clear, I am an egomaniac, but I'm not so much of an egomaniac that I think that my opinion is definitive in any way.
Right. And the thing about Star Wars is there's so much of it. There's so many things to like. There's so many ways to go into it, right? A Star Wars movie is a Western. It's a romance. It's science fiction. It's fantasy. It's political commentary. And you might watch it for the political commentary, and I watch it because I'm a student of special effects. Either way, we're both going to find things that we enjoy in it, and we're also probably going to find things that we have a problem with. And I think that it's okay to have that conversation. I want to call it JD's comment here, because I think it's really interesting, and it takes us towards sort of this fandom menace avenue here. JD says it's disturbing that people think that the haters are actually fans. It's like saying the scalpers are actually collectors. They're both in it for profit. And that is a really interesting point. A lot of the people who have a very negative perspective on the Star Wars era of Disney like to say that I'm a true fan, which is the most gatekeepery thing I think I've ever heard anybody say. You're not a true fan because that's like me, it's like people who I've liked the band since they were, playing basement bars. So you're not a real fan. It's ridiculous to say, but to try to gatekeep people out and try to base it on quantifying your fandom is a bit ridiculous.
But I do want to say, like, it's important, honestly, for the sake of ever healing this rift. And thank you very much. It's very sweet of you. Like you can't say that the haters aren't fans, because they, even if some of them are coming from a place of just wanting to make money, they're still coming from a place of passion.
Mm.
And as me trying to be a compassionate human being, like, I feel like it's important to recognize that. And you and I discussed the other day how there is something very valid in the idea that people who especially really spent the dark times of Star Wars, when content wasn't out there, just completely enmeshed in all of the Legends novels.
Yep.
Like, it's very easy to forget that these people were very genuinely slighted by Disney, and by how quick to dismiss everything that they had loved and supported for years, and was all of the Star Wars that they had for years. And I think it left them with a reasonable bad taste in their mouth. And I am
Mm.
very much of the mind that I believe when George Lucas was having those discussions, I think that, as a business is always going to do, he was probably told that they would handle his creation more reverently and lovingly than was necessarily true. I don't think they've mishandled it, but I
Right.
definitely think that they have gone at it aggressively profit driven, much more so than when it wasn't in their hands. And I can see that that's frustrating for people. I even, as much as, like, I will watch any Star Wars that you put in front of me, and I am never going to complain about having a constant stream of new content. Do I think it's a little bit too front loaded right now? Do I think it takes some of the air and the specialness out of it being Star
Yep.
Wars?
Yep.
Maybe.
Hmm.
But I also think that it would be, like, I wish that some of the people who had really visceral hatred for it, like, I wish that they had the ability um, to center themselves and make their arguments more rational and cogent, because sometimes, as with anything, there's always a kernel of truth. And it, like, there are things that they say that sometimes deserve to be acknowledged and listened to, but you just can't, because all it is just in this, like, it's like literally trying to, like, I don't know, pick a butterfly out of a cloud of bees. You can't do it. And, like, especially, like the most, I think, and I said this on TikTok, because I posted a video about how sad it was that Star Wars official had to come on and tell people not to be racist. And someone in my comments said, well, it is ridiculous that they just assumed that we were going to be racist, that they just told us not to be racist before we went and did anything. But then you went and
Then they
then you
did
were
it.
racist.
That's right.
I
Yep.
said, like, it's not like they didn't have precedent for this. It's not like you didn't spend 2 decades doing it to Ahmed Best. It's not like you didn't force Kelly Marie Tran off of social media. It's not like you didn't force Daisy Ridley off of social media. It's not like you didn't also bully Naomi Aki.
Yeah.
Like,
How did
it,
people forget that the very first shot that we saw of the new Star Wars with John Boyega sent racist fans over
That's what
the
I said.
edge?
That's what I
Yeah.
said. The very first second that you saw a black stormtrooper, the entire internet was just filled with racist rhetoric, like, just
Yep.
across the board. And then the same people complained, like, 18 months later, that they hated where his storyline went. And honestly, like, you didn't deserve to have say in his storyline. But I
Yep.
told the person in my comments, like, the second you left the N word in Moses Ingram's Instagram DMs, not only did you invalidate anything you might have had to say about her character, you also invalidated any reasonable criticism anybody else would have had about the show,
Yep.
because you just can't anymore. It's just now, like, you have to support her with your full chest, which I do. I thought the character very much kind of dragged storyline wise in the middle and didn't go like where I was hoping they were going to go with her. But like I will support her with everything that I have, and I don't feel comfortable voicing any criticisms that I have about how she was written, because I don't want to be under that umbrella of people I don't want to be associated with.
And that's the challenge, right? Is yes, do I have critiques from a storytelling perspective of the Riva story? Yeah, I do. The challenge, though, is we've now been sort of backed into one of these corners where if I'm to come out and say, hey, I had an issue with the way Riva turned so quickly, or whatever it might be, um, then the other side, the quote unquote our friends who are on that super positive side say, wait a second, how can you can't say that because there's been ownership from the dark side of the fandom. We threw the link up for people to join us live on the show, and we had somebody take us up on it right away. And I think he's new to hanging out with us on the show. He goes by the name of Darth Chaco, and I'm going to bring him into the stream. Darth, how are you?
I'm doing excellent.
Everybody has a better microphone than me. I'm so mad.
I'm guessing you have a podcast of some sort, Darth Chaco, because you have a microphone, an awesome looking background. You're ready to rock. You're like, I'm ready to be the third host tonight.
Yeah. I mean, I've been following ATG Cast for quite a long time. I've been doing my thing on TikTok as
awesome.
As Darth Chaco. First time I've been able to catch you guys live.
Love it.
Definitely I'm a big new fan of you, Regan. And my take on it is you guys are I feel like my people. As a whole, I love Last Jedi. It's actually my favorite Star Wars film.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like The Rise of Skywalker. The Force Awakens is in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm spread across the board here.
Sure.
But with this with what we've been getting, I'm a huge Expanded Universe fan. Jaina Solo is my favorite all-time character. It's been 10 years. It's been 10 years. And if you're holding on to this hatred, and you've been holding on to hatred for 10 years.
Yeah. Yep.
I feel so bad for you. Because that's not good. That's not human. There's a thing that's uniquely Star Wars in the ability to hate watch shows. I'm also a fan of DC, and I love all the characters that you'll see in the show Titans. I hate the show Titans. I made it 5 episodes in. I can't do it. But could you imagine if I waited until midnight every night to watch every new episode, just go online and be a dick about it? It's so weird.
It's such a weird way to live, right? I mean, I say that all the time. It's like, it's sad, and to be able to take some, and we see it in Star Wars, we see it in DC, we see it in Marvel, we see it. I'm a huge Philadelphia Flyers fan. I've been a fan since I'm 5 years old. I'm a hockey nut. And the Flyers have been making some signings lately. Not great signings, not bad signings, but every time I see them come up, the comments that come in social media under the Flyers accounts are like, it's like Fandom Menace stuff. It's like, wait a second, you guys aren't GMs, you guys aren't talent scouts, you guys aren't owning the business. It's a different perspective, but to just wake up every day to be angry about something, that's not evil. That's just sad. That's just a really bad way to live your life. And understandably, I think the only sort of avenue that I give, and the only sort of leeway I give, is the fact that the world right now is a mess, and people are dealing with stress in different ways. The thing that makes that statement completely irrelevant, though, is the fact that this has been happening since the prequels, right? And people have forgotten about that. So it's just this desire to get 5 minutes of fame by being the biggest loudmouth with a negative comment about something. And I just don't understand where there's any happiness that you get out of that. So,
well, also I think part of the problem is that people, like the same kind of criticisms that came out with Thor, people don't like anything that deviates very much from what what is their comfort. And the thing about Star Wars is that it's like, you know, as somebody who's also a huge fan of classic TV and sitcoms, they say that if you're like a really anxious person, you love reruns because you don't have to stress out too much about what's going to happen, and it's just emotionally very comforting to you. And like, you know, for the people who own Star Wars since the old like CBS Fox VHSs and whatever, you know, like it is very, very comforting, and they have this very strong mental connection to how Star Wars should be. And like the original trilogy was so, I mean, it was like very much timeless in that it was made very well, that even like, even though you know it's in the 70s, it's not like, if you didn't know it was made in the 70s, it's not particularly easily dateable. That is not necessarily true of the prequels. And I think like part of people's ire with the prequels is much like people who like Walt Disney World, because the entire outside world is kind of locked out of it. Like they make sure that it's, you don't ever see the outside world from the parks.
It's like
They
a
don't
Vegas
like
casino. Yeah.
Right. They don't like Disneyland because Disney, like Anaheim doesn't have, like when it was built, it didn't have that kind of wide open swamp that you could just sprawl and build. You're still very much kind of I can't say that word, peripherally aware that like the real world exists. And I think that was part of people's issue with the prequels, is that there was too much of like just life and like the 90s and 2000s dripping into it that they didn't like very much. You know, and I think that now, like when people have had 40 years to hold on to all of this as their comfort material, to see Disney kind of taking it in so many different directions, some which, you know, we admit are a little bit disjointed, I think that it is very triggering to that part of you that is mollified literally, chemically, and emotionally by sameness, by like homogeny. And you know, I don't necessarily think that a lot of people like are cognizant of that. They just know that it feels bad and they have to react. They have to, you know, the only thing that is going to like be ointment for that bad feeling that they have is feeling validated that other people hate it too. So they bring that out into the internet, and then they can all hate it together. But unfortunately, as is the case, even with the way that people get radicalized politically, things incubate. Hate incubates. If you keep feeding it, the energy just grows and grows, and that's often what you see here.
Yep. And the challenge is that there's money in it right now as well. So
I do think that's a big part of it. I made a clickbait video on my YouTube channel. It was a bait and switch about Kathleen Kennedy, and the amount of comments I started and traction it started getting from people who hadn't even watched. I took it down. I was like, oh, I don't even I don't even want to visually add to this mess.
Yeah.
But there's something I'm curious about, and I'm curious, Regan. You've said you've been reading up on a lot of the canon books. Have you read Bloodline by Claudia Gray?
I have not read it. I own it, and it was very spoiled for me by most of my friends, so I have not yet read it, but I'm super familiar with it. And it is in my living room in my unread pile. Okay,
excellent book. I'm caught up on canon books and stuff, but I partially wonder if part of the vitriol that we kind of see is because the original trilogy was kind of modeled after the Vietnam War, which was over/ending at the time that the films came out. The prequels came out. There's a lot of that time period. There's a lot of Bush Senior represented in it. Reading the book Way of Bloodlines, which is the rise of the First Order, there's a whole group of people that look back at the Empire longingly, and they think about how, Palpatine was a bad dude, but there was a lot of good stuff with the Empire. We want to make the galaxy great again. There's a lot of really reading it right now is interesting, and I'm curious if you haven't read it yet, so I guess it's not a good question, but I would say to read that book and see if anyone thinks that some of the vitriol might be because of who is represented on the sides of the conflict in the sequel trilogy.
Right. That's a fair way to put it. Yep. I think it's I think it's that's a lot of it is it's sort of like there's a opinion that some of the reason people don't like the Luke Skywalker that they got in The Last Jedi was because he's hard to see yourself in him, right? The old man who had big dreams and big hopes and a handful of failures and trying to assess your life. Well, that's the 45 to 50-year-old Star Wars fan at that moment. And when I saw Luke Skywalker last, now I'm a big fan of Last Jedi. I'm just putting myself in their shoes. But the last time that person saw Luke Skywalker, he was on his way to glory. He was on his way to being that guy that we all wanted him to be. And to have to stop and say, wow, he didn't get there. Something happened. And that's the same thing with Obi-Wan in the Kenobi series is, yeah, of course the show didn't start with him being the guy we saw in the Clone Wars series, because he has lost everything. Every time he's had an opportunity, it's been lost. It's been something he can call a failure, and it's a difficult way to live. And to watch that as a 50-year-old man like I am and look at that character and look at the things that have happened in your life that have gone extremely well, and the things have not gone extremely well. When you're looking at your fantasy, your favorite story, and it's sort of serving up the failures and the impact of failure, that's not a fun story. So I understand it, but it's also a hell of an exciting and interesting story to watch because then what you're doing is you're seeing how they rise from that failure, how they rise from that midlife crisis and become the person that they have always been meant to be. And I think that's why it's a little bit difficult for people. And to your point about Bloodline, 100%. I mean, it's Leia even coming to that realization of who she is, and the people who are in that sort of first order side of things, they're building their way up, right? They're not the people you want to see. So, but Darth Vader, yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
let me just address. I have to. Sorry, like it's in my throat right now. The thing I really want to address with people with Luke, like two things. I said to you, hi Bill. I said on the phone the other day how to me Luke Skywalker is to men of a certain age as Bella Swan was to like teenage girls in the mid 2000s. Like, you know, it's just a complete blank slate that they could have projected themselves onto. But when people have like this visceral complaint about what Luke became by Last Jedi, like I feel like whose story were they watching? Because you had a 19-year-old kid watch his de facto parents get burnt to a crisp, you know, gets adopted by someone who also dies immediately, gets told by like, you know, a grouchy, slimy space Muppet that, you know, he's the sole, he has the sole responsibility of saving the galaxy from this terrible evil. And that guy dies 10 minutes later. He never finishes his training. He never fully understands what he's supposed to do. You know, he gets almost electrocuted, makes out with the sister, like, you know, finds out who his father is, watches his father die in front of him, thinks that he has defeated what is effectively Nazi Germany, only to see it rise up again, only to see it rise up worse, and to feel responsible about it because of what happened to his nephew, and to maybe rightfully feel like he failed because everyone like was very quick to abandon Ben Solo when they saw an inkling of darkness rising up in him, more so than I even think honestly is true to Leia's character, and I've always had an issue with that. But of course he's going to be jaded, of course he's going to be angry, and I'm very glad that he, you know, was a vessel for acknowledging what I've always felt have been the fundamental problems with the Jedi. Like I've never liked the fact that they are held in like this kind of pristine regard when they made so many just absolutely catastrophic mistakes that ultimately led to the downfall of anything. And even though all of that is like clearly clearly spelled out in the prequels, they still are put on this pedestal that has always been unwarranted. And I thought it was really important to address that. And I think it's maybe also important, like as the way that I had a friend who mentioned that they didn't like Book of Boba very much because they had built up the mystique, which all of us did, of Boba Fett forever, and it kind of, to see him as a human going through all of these trials and tribulations was very disappointing. But for me, I like to see people having a true human experience. I like to see people not just being the sum total of their victories and their failures, but to see like how they become something better because of it, how it strengthens them and galvanizes them, and how it gives them a sense of purpose. And I think that was very much true with Luke, and I think his story concluded so beautifully and importantly and poignantly. And like I feel like I had never been more cognizant of people just not seeing the nuance in a story than I was watching them react to that in the way that they did.
100%. Well, Darth Choco, tell us where people can find you, and we have a couple more callers that we got to get to as we come close to the end of the show tonight. But where can people find you? And thank you so much for being hanging out with us for as long as you have. This is I didn't realize you were there all along. You're like Agatha. You were there all along. Where can people find you?
All along. So I'm Darth Choco. I make a lot of content on TikTok as Darth Choco, on YouTube also as Darth Choco. I'm Darth Choco 7 on Twitter, which is where I saw this. I've been following you guys for a long time. Thank you so much for bringing me on. I'll let you get to the other people, but just real quick, I do want to say that I really enjoyed it. I even see myself in modern day Luke, and I think that the kind of where we've been heading is that a lot of people just want Star Wars for the power fantasy. That's part of it. The Force Unleashed. It's an absolute power fantasy. With the, if you look at Revan and the Old Republic, that's a power fantasy. They want to have self-insert characters that are power fantasies. The failure in Luke humanized him. I think it made him so much better of a character.
100%.
And yep. I relate to the failure. And the crazy part, the weirdest part of it is that this happened in the expanded universe. And when Jason Solo turned to the dark side, Luke could have killed him. But Luke said, I will fall back to the dark side again if I kill him. Just like because he turned and served Palpatine. So it was so much worse there. and I just there's so many parts of it I still don't understand. Anyways,
I'm not giving out my socials here, but I just followed your TikTok, so follow me back.
I will follow you back. Hopefully I'll get you. Oh, just real quick, High Ground Podcast. We go live 5:30 p.m. Pacific time on Wednesdays, and Diet in the Force on Saturdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Anyways, thank you for letting me join.
You are so
thank
lovely.
you so
I
much
love
for joining us. I love it. We'll talk again very soon, man. See ya. Bye.
Okay.
Oh, he was so sweet.
He was awesome.
Awesome. Totally.
So cool. Well, we have two more guests, and we're heading up to the top of the hour. So if Eli and Connor don't mind, I'm going to bring them in together. They kind of go together, and I think it's great to see the two of these guys. And so here's Eli, and here's Connor. Connor's eating his dinner.
My
I'm guessing.
favorite Danimal in the entire world.
Hello,
Connor,
guys. How are you doing?
Like 15 minutes before this, so I don't think it's any I don't think there's anything more appropriate than bringing us in together, honestly.
I think you guys kind of go together. You're like peanut butter jelly or whatever Connor's eating for dinner. It seems to go together very well. Connor, how are you? I'm going to try to catch you eating and just try to get you like with something in your mouth.
No, it's fine. I'm good.
Hi, Jerry.
Hi, Jerry.
Well,
I'm good. I'm eating lasagna because I got off a run like an hour ago and I need to carb up. Eli, what points did you want to add to this conversation? I know you popped in pretty early on.
No, there's a lot of good stuff I've been hearing. There's a lot of interesting stuff about about Discourse and about how people view Star Wars, and there's a lot of I do feel like there's a lot of people there's a lot of people viewing Star Wars for what they want it to be and not what it is. And I think that's a major problem. And I think managing expectations. I just did an entire episode on In a Galaxy. Quick plug, dropped 5 minutes ago. But anyway, about predictions for the rest of 2022's content. I'm not bound to any of those predictions.
Yeah.
I don't feel like any of them need to happen. I think they would be cool, but what I want most is the story to be the story. I want the story to carry itself out on its own terms. I don't feel the need to be pandered to. Mm-hmm. And I feel like too often people feel the need to be pandered to.
I think that's a great point. I think I've learned a valuable lesson with Last Jedi, which has become one of my favorite Star Wars stories. But I walked out of it. I've said this 100 times. Anybody who's seen or listened to Around the Galaxy has heard me say, when I walked out of The Last Jedi, I said it was both the best and worst Star Wars movie I'd ever seen. And it turns out the reason I didn't love it was because in my head, I had written it before I saw it, and it was none of those things. And I think that's why it's become one of my favorite Star Wars stories, is because I feel like Rian Johnson got the lore, he understood it, and he took the story in a place that none of us expected. And I think that's also why Kenobi was so good. I am so glad that I didn't keep up with the rumors that had exposed that Leia was going to be on the show. And from what I understand, none of those rumors said she was going to be in every episode of the show. And to see that and to take the story down that road that none of us were expecting was refreshing, right? I mean, I think in our heads, Kenobi sat on Tatooine for 20 years and waited for Luke to come and find him. That would be a very boring show. But to be able to show this show, to tell his arc, to bring him back from the really dark place he was at emotionally, and to come back is amazing and a great story. So I love that. And you know what, Eli, it's really important because I think fans do theories. That's what keeps us going. That's why there's 14,000 Star Wars podcasts, because we all say, well, what, maybe Cad Bane did blah, 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 or maybe this is happening. And that's fun. And it's being very careful, though, that your head canon doesn't become the canon, and you have to give the story up to the people who are the storytellers. And so I think that's an awesome point. I love it. Connor, what do you have? Other than a mouthful of lasagna.
Yeah. I don't really know. Like, everything that's pretty much been said that I've listened to, because I saw that this stream was happening maybe like 10 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. Everything that's probably been said has just been like pretty much everything that I've heard over the last few years. And it just sucks that we have to keep reiterating the same points.
Yeah.
But like, this fandom sucks. Like there's two scientific things that I love. It's the chocolate milk is the best recovery drink for runners, and this fandom sucks. You can scientifically prove both of those. And so it's just like, okay. First of all, this is actually my first time on ATG.
Yep.
And
technically mine too. So yeah.
Nice.
I'm glad to have you both hanging out with us. I noticed that it's when Nick's not here, so I'm just going to make sure to point that out.
Correlation doesn't equal causation.
Yeah. Well, hey, there's your science there.
But no. I just lost my train of thought. It derailed. What was it? I can't remember. Come back to me.
That's all right.
You're talking about how this fandom verifiably sucks.
Yeah, verifiably sucks. And like, I can't remember it. I straight up cannot remember what my next thought was going to be.
Well, I did also want to say.
I just remembered. Sorry, Regan. But like, as some people have said, I'm the most conflict-averse person that you will probably ever meet. I am, truthfully. Yes. I do not like conflict. Like, online, at least, it's easy to manage that. Because it's like, oh, this guy's being a jerk. Block and move on. report and move on. Just all that stuff. That's just, it's easy to do that for your own space. But when it comes to sort of like the larger space of online Star Wars fandom and other people, you know, that doesn't work for them. Where like they can just block and move on.
Mhm.
It's harder for them to like sort of deal with that. And like, I think I don't want to say it's up to us. That's not the right phrasing, but like, for lack of a better phrase, it's like up to us to like unite and sort of help them fight the good fight in whatever way we can. There's no one good way. I would personally, there's no one just singular way to fight the good fight against against the bad parts of the fandom. There's multitudes of ways to do it. Like Obi-Wan says, there are alternatives to fighting. Wow, that is, it's a mouthful.
That's fair.
Of a line.
Well, I want to add to that also, like something that I feel like I didn't get to say kind of in the meat of this podcast is we have to acknowledge that the problem is not just with people who hop on to have very reactionary like hatred towards Star Wars. It is that we, you know, who I don't know, like to self-describe ourselves as the light side of the Force, we feel the need to, out of our own passion, we react to all of it, and we feel the need to try to negate all of it and explain why people are wrong. And in certain cases, when you see like abject misogyny, abject racism, it's definitely important to acknowledge it. But also, like, I think we have to be cognizant of how much we are also polluting the feed by doing nothing but having a back and forth about this instead of just having like actual discussion about the art itself, about having discussion about what the actual property is. And to your point about how you know, people get very wrapped up in what they want Star Wars to be rather than what it is. It's also that I feel like in 2019, around the time that Endgame was about to drop and Game of Thrones was ending, the YouTube culture of speculation really started to ramp up really heavy. And everybody realized there was money to be made on these clickbait videos of like, you know, supposed leaks, what they thought was going to happen. And that, I think, is such a dangerous element to an already toxic fandom because people cling on to those ideas.
Right.
They get really excited about them, like
And they
Mephisto,
adopt them like they're their baby.
and then they're just completely disappointed because it doesn't play out that way. And nobody promised you that other than some random person on the internet. So of course you're going to be disappointed.
Right.
Yeah, and they adopt them like they're their child, and they get disappointed when it doesn't come true.
100%.
So.
And I think that is part of the challenge, is kind of pushing your way away from those, you know, as Eli was saying, you know, there's fan theories, but that's not it. And then it's sort of like, and it is hard to separate yourself because you have a great idea and it doesn't happen. And you're like, well, my idea was better. Of course I just, this past week we had Greg Iwinski on Around the Galaxy, and he's a comedy writer. He's won Emmys for writing for late night television. He said, you know, there are things that we write down and we in the writer's room believe it is the best thing that's ever been written, and we know it's going to work, and they shoot it and it doesn't work. And it's the same thing here, is in your head with the unlimited budget and the unlimited sort of rules and guidelines behind it. What a great story. And that's why it came from you. So of course you love it, but that you need to also then be able to say, but what's the story that I'm getting? And then, and love that. So,
and to that,
go ahead.
Okay,
I guess
Eli.
you're still...
And to that point,
Okay.
Pete, like, it's a lot easier to sort of tweak and tinker with elements of a story that's already been told that you just weren't big on, and sort of tweak them to your own liking, than it is to create an entirely new story from scratch and actually like go through the process of crafting it and writing it and figuring out, does this element work? Does element A work with element B? And does it work in the overall tapestry of the story? Like, it's a lot easier to just be like,
sure, It's easier to
A,
change
B,
one
and C.
piece of it than to change
Yeah.
the whole thing, to create the whole thing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so like my thing with people who aren't big on like parts of stories, like just write fan fiction. It's not hard.
Yeah.
It's very therapeutic. It's not hard.
Eli, I'm going to give you the last word on this conversation.
Yeah. Thanks. I was also going to say about, I was going to talk about one of my own experiences with expectation, and it was Kenobi 6, which is like one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars content to come out in the last 3 years, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a thing where, like, you know, in the weeks prior, we had been building to Qui-Gon because Obi-Wan had been saying his name a bunch, and I'm like, I really hope they don't just bring Qui-Gon in the last minute and have just say one thing to Obi-Wan and then end. And that's exactly what they did, and I loved it.
Yes. Yep.
And I remember like talking with a few of my friends, Connor, who was one of them. I'm like, I cannot believe they did what I absolutely did not want them to do, and they made it work.
Yes.
And I feel like there's a major moment of growth for me because I don't think I could have done that 4 or 5 years ago. I don't think I could have. Like, it's not an easy process, but I think it is a process. Not to brag too much, but like it is a process that is worth it, and it's a process that can be done. To have expectations in your mind and not completely get disappointed when they don't happen exactly the way you want.
100%.
Though my worry was actually a little bit more extreme. I thought my main worry was actually that Obi-Wan was going to wake up in like a cold sweat or something like that, and you're just going to hear Obi-Wan, and then it cuts to credits.
Oh, right.
In their defense, we actually did see Qui-Gon, so like. It's a lot more than what I was worried we were going to get, but again, it's just about expectations and managing that kind of stuff.
100%. Well, Eli, Connor, thank you guys both so much for joining us tonight and popping in the live stream with us. And I'll be definitely keeping up with you guys, of course, as I always do on social. Connor, do you got any Twitter Spaces coming up? You are like the king of Twitter Spaces for a while there.
No,
I think we need to do an anniversary one on D Plus Day. We do.
If I don't work, we'll do it. I'm planning on it. If I don't have work that day, I am planning on it.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Love you guys. Thank you so much.
Well, there you go, Regan. Welcome to the live call version of the show.
That was fabulous.
It was great. I had so much fun because these are, I love it because it's people we get to hang out with in social media, and then we get to talk to them in, I'd say, real life. I don't know if I would definitely call this real life or not. This is sort of fake life. So, Regan, we are at the we've gone over an hour as we knew was a possibility because this was such a great conversation. I hope you had a good time joining us tonight.
Such a great time.
And we'd love to have you come back sometime. And maybe if I can get on vacation, you can do this with Nick. Or better yet, why don't we just we'll just make this the Regan and Pete show. Right now it's a Streaming Star Wars with Fletcher and Milky. We can change it to Streaming Star Wars with Regan and Pete. We can make that happen.
Don't give me a bigger head than I already got. I feel like we forgot a topic though. We had another topic that we were going to discuss, and now I've forgotten what it was. But I know we have to wrap it up. You know what? We'll be around next week, so maybe we can hit it then. So, Regan, thank you so much. This was awesome, and this was wonderful.
I look forward to doing this again with you sometime. And hey, we got to get you as part of Pottathon as well. So for sure, 100%. Last year, and everybody watch Pottathon, support Pottathon. It was so much fun, so amazing. They got guests last time around that I do not know how they pulled them out of the universe. And as always, these guys have such a gift, all of them, for making people so comfortable and just feel like they're part of like our little extended Star Wars family. And it's for such a good cause. It's to make like little kids' dreams come true. And there's just, you can't go wrong with that. So please. You don't get better than that for sure. Well, Regan, thank you so much. And may the Force be with you. May the Force be with you always.